Cosplay Stitch and Seam.
Yay!
Hooray!
It's a new episode!
It's a new episode in front of our largest live audience ever. 3 people! Yeah!
We had
More extra bodies.
There's 4 bodies.
Yes,
Well,
you gotta
David's here every week watching us be dumb, so he doesn't count.
Aw.
Melissa's here almost every week as our live audience watching us be dumb.
The Japanese festival had more,
true.
actually.
That's true. Well, some of them were guests, though.
True. Never mind.
But yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode, since some of our studio audience are from that episode.
Yeah.
But this week we're going to be talking about documentation.
So we're kind of coming back to the cosplay contest
Judging.
episodes. Woo!
Judging Jackalope.
Judging Jackalope has returned.
There we go!
Judging Jackalope of all trades. So we wanted to kind of have this episode to help you put together documentation that's going to benefit you the most going into judging.
Yes.
Since we both have experience both as people who have entered many, many cosplay contests and people who have judged many cosplay contests, we've kind of seen documentation and we've made documentation and wanted to do something that kind of tells you guys what to be careful of and what will help you out.
Yes. So during this episode, if you hear anything that you want to know more about or have any questions on, you can go ahead and email us at CosplayStitchandSeam@gmail.com.
Or you can go to our website, CosplayStitchandSeam.com, and there's a little form you can fill out. Or, of course...
Or the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cosplay Stitch and Seam Facebook group. Lots of good people in there.
Yeah, we always post the new episode and then, everyone's afraid to comment, but, come comment.
Come comment, it's okay.
Tell us we're dumb, it's okay.
I mean, everyone already knows that I am.
And of course, if you guys do find this, our judging episodes, useful or, any topics that we cover, if you want to help us out, share it with your friends. Does so much to help our viewership and, help us create content that's going to be better for you guys down the line. So
we are here for you.
Yeah.
So documentation.
For me with documentation, before we even get into it, I kind of wanted to talk about, because, we've both been to, several different contest judges, and seeing documentation, and I feel rarely do I get a chance to review the documentation outside of the time constraints you get when you're going in to see a judge. Have you, in your experience, Mercedes, I think I've had 1 or 2 cons where I got to review it.
It depends on the place. Again, I really like it when you have 5 minutes with the contestant and they're presenting to you, and then you have 5 minutes in between, and that's usually where I capitalize on looking through things.
That's a good point.
Especially if the cosplayer hasn't used their documentation as part of the presentation, which they don't have to.
Right.
It's just supposed to be kind of review, and I do usually take it, set it aside, and be okay, this one, I want to remember this one, and I'll set it aside if they let me keep it, because some people only have so many copies.
Right, that's fair.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that, honestly, that once the cosplayers leave the room and the judges kind of are conferring,
yes.
That is definitely
that time
the biggest time when you review it and look over it while it's still fresh in your mind.
Yeah, I think that gives me the best view, because it's I've seen their presentation, I was able to focus totally on that, and now I can take a little bit of time while discussing with the judges to look through the documentation more thoroughly. Denver Comic-Con gives their contestants 10 minutes each to present with the judges, and they don't give a ton of time in between. But we had enough time when I was there judging to actually be able to go through things a little bit more thoroughly, and it was really nice.
Well, that's one of the biggest things I wanted to bring up was the time.
Yes.
And planning for it. So if you are in a place where you only get 5 minutes to talk about things, you're definitely going to plan things differently than when you get 10 whole minutes.
Yeah.
How would you say you catered your presentation for that one compared to other conventions you've been to?
So I kept my documentation very short and sweet. With 10 minutes even, I still keep it short and sweet, because I want to show them what I have in front of them right now, and the documentation, I just wanted to remind them of, hey, you saw this thing.
Okay.
And again, always the number one thing is to put in your reference picture and have that front and center.
Yes.
I don't even bother with here's the finished product at the end of the thing. I just want to have this is the cosplay reference, and then
Yeah.
here's the progress inside.
Nice.
I attempt to limit it to 5 pages. If you look at like different cosplay contests and whatnot, they will sometimes have rules for how many pages in your documentation
True.
to
Yep.
how many pictures in your documentation.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So try and make sure that you are still within their parameters as well.
Uh-huh.
Because the judges often won't get a ton of time to go through that, and so you want to use it as a reminder of, you saw this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they'll be talking about it in, deliberation, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this cosplayer, they had this really cool technique that they used. What was it? And then they'll pull up the documentation and flip through it and go, oh yeah, it was this thing here. This is why I was really impressed.
Nice.
And so it's just try to make it like a quick reference for the judges
yeah.
and for yourself.
Nice. I embarrassed to say, like, when we did World Cosplay Summit for a few years in a row, when we kept, like, they actually had an award a while back that was for, like, best documentation. And once I knew that was a thing, like, I went so gung-ho on it that, like, I made these, like, I think it was the year we did Sailor Moon. And, yeah, the portfolio. So for the portfolio, I did, I did them as playing cards. So, like, for the portfolio, we had to, like, have a profile picture and have specific information, like how long we've been cosplaying, what awards we'd gotten, things like that. And then I had them kind of, like, as if they were, like, almost like a Pokemon card or something. Like, it said, like, it had a cosplay picture of, like, my Lelouch, and it said, like, what type he was, and, like, details about the costume, and, like, a flavor tab at the bottom, and, like,
I remember that.
I had
Those
so much fun
cute
with the documentation. So, like, you, like, can still have a lot of fun and make it memorable without it taking up a ton of time.
Yes.
So, you actually mentioned one of the things that I wanted to bring into our first point of discussion, which is information and images in your documentation.
Yes.
Character reference, 100%, super important.
If you're only going to have
if you
one
have
thing,
nothing else, have a picture of what your character is supposed to look like.
I mean, I go to a lot of anime conventions. I don't watch a ton of animes, and so I will actually maybe not know your character.
It happens, yeah.
If it's a video game, I still might not maybe know your character. There's so many video games, and there's so many animes too. So it's like, especially if you have someone obscure, just be ready with that reference image.
Really important, like, if you have different angles, if you have close-ups, if it's in color, not all the time, like, it isn't always. I know for, like, when I did Fi from Tsubasa, it was the first time I was doing craftsmanship in a contest. Like, it was, like, my first big, like, I'm gonna try and do craftsmanship. And so I put together a portfolio that had, like, this detailed close-up shot of, like, this is what his buckle looks like. And, like, this coat, like, I did not have, like, a rear view because, like, the art image only had it from one side.
Yeah.
Because it's his, like, deluxe version. And so I had to, like, draw out what I thought it looked like if it was mirrored. And so I had a sketch of that. And I had, like, close-ups of, like, when he, in that particular one, like, when he takes off the coat, his tunic actually has, like, little extras on the bottom. And I was like, okay, here's a close-up of that. So you know, like, what I did for this. And, yeah, just having, like, as many angles, as many close-ups. If you are basing something on, like, a historical costume, like, mention it. Well, even more than mention, like, have a reference of that. Like, I know a lot of gowns in video games, a lot of gowns in cosplay are loosely, at best, based on real functioning garments. Unless you're talking about, like, a lot of the more recent stuff, and even then it's hit or miss. But
that in itself is, like, a whole topic that I'd love to talk about sometime. Is just like how it's like I love the turn of how many video games right now are trying to be like, hey, look, there's seams on this, and sometimes they don't always have realistic seams, but it's slowly turning more and more of, like, how can we make this so that people can make it?
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, well, like, recently, even though it's been a couple of years, I've been playing Final Fantasy 15, and the wedding dress in that is actually a Vivienne Westwood designer wedding dress. Like, it's in the game the same way it is in real life. And I'm like, that's really cool. Like, all of their outfits like exist in real life, and so like you can actually get real references on what the seams look like. So it's really cool.
Having historical, like, you're like, hey, this dress here, you may look at like a game or an anime and be like, okay, it was essentially taking inspiration from this time period, and you can choose, it's up to you if you want to actually do it from that time period. It may change the look of the dress so it doesn't look like it does in the anime.
Yeah.
But
sometimes they appreciate that more, that you took that extra step. I know, like, Mercedes has mentioned when we were judging her for the first time that what we really liked about her costume is that it made sense within the world she was cosplaying from. Mm-hmm. The way it was built made sense for the world she built it from, you know?
And it's okay to do that. It's not wrong to... There is no wrong decision there.
Right.
Because again, for Cosplay Contests, it's how well did you craft it in the end. Mm-hmm. But ideas like that can be really fun to pursue.
Right. I like, one of the hardest decisions though is like when you're doing like more old historic stuff and you're like, do I sew this on a machine or do I do it by hand and torture myself?
Sew it on a machine. Hands down, that's my decision.
Well, yes, but
I do enough hand embroidery on my own to be like.
So I will say it definitely depends on what you're using it for. If you're doing a historic sort of competition, you're going to want to use historic techniques. If you're doing like a modern interpretation of it, then it is not going to matter as much. So, but yeah, like, make sure if you're doing something outside of the box, like, let the judges know, like, what inspired you to do it that way.
Yes, and why, because sometimes they'll be like, that's actually a very clever decision. Mm-hmm. And it helps.
Yeah. and like, keeping in that, like, making sure that the things you've picked and embellishments and things make sense.
Yes.
Because, like, you don't want to have, like, crazy beadwork on maybe
on
like a
Pokemon
shonen
trainer.
Action hero Pokemon trainer. Yeah.
Pokemon trainer totally glitzed out.
Yeah. Well,
that could be
depends on the gym leader, maybe, but like Pokemon trainer probably not.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, he's running around and stuff. Like maybe that's not the best idea. It may be
easy
funny.
To wear. The sequins are Pokemon lures.
Yes.
Oh no.
Oh
no. But yeah, and making sure it makes sense for the character is important. But yeah, making sure the judges kind of like follow your same thought process, what you went through to go, I'm going to make it this way. Make sure the judges are on the same page with you and go, oh, okay, that's why you did that.
Yes.
And next thing as far as images go is progress photos. So
yes,
this is something like definitely going to vary by contest, whether you get to do like, 5 photos altogether or 50 photos is definitely going to vary by how much time you get and what contest you're entering. An important like rule of thumb that I use is photos should show things that the judges wouldn't have been able to see in person. So if you did some like dye work, they're not going to see that. They're just going to see the finished final like fabric that you have. If you cut things out of like wood before you painted and treated it, they're not going to see that step because they're just going to see the final product. So you want your photos to show as much of that background work as you can. Mm-hmm.
If you are wearing a set of armor and you probably don't want to strip in front of the judges to show them the undertunic, have a picture of how that tunic fits and works, especially if for, some reason it has extra details on it.
Yes.
My Aloy cosplay with her fire armor has a weird kind of wrap thing that goes around her chest. Mm-hmm. And so I had a picture of how that looked without the full leather armor on top of it. Mm-hmm. To be like, here's this thing. And also, here's where I put all the seams and whatnot to make it so it was practically seamless.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And, if you're okay with stripping in front of the judges, that is always an option.
Make sure the judges are comfortable too. I mean, consent is important.
If I am judging, I am 100% consenting to it. Like, it just happens. You have my consent from here on. As long as we're, like, not getting past the skivvies, you're okay.
Within reason.
But, I mean, well, you have to have a reason to strip, first of all. Like, if you made historic skivvies, like, we might want to see them, but, like...
I mean... The Civil War, Captain America Civil War ladies.
Oh, totally.
Everything down to, like, what they were wearing underneath was all...
Nice. Yeah. Love it.
So, yeah, we did lift some skirts there. It was awesome.
But yeah, like, take that as the rule of thumb, is, like, stuff that you're not going to show the judges in person, that's what you want photos of.
Yes.
Cool.
And along with those photos, like, it can be very easy to be working on something and get so far and realize, oh, I didn't take any pictures of that. So try and remind yourself to, or if you're working with a friend, have them help take photos. I always try to include at least one picture of myself working on something.
Yes.
So that it's obviously me doing the work. And, like, most places don't require that. I just find it nice to be like, this is me working on this. And as a proof of it's not a commissioned thing.
So I have, like, a stupid birthmark on my hand. So as long as my hand is in the picture, and I'm like, I can show you this is my hand. It has my birthmark on it.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm down. Or my crappy manicures.
Yeah, crappy manicures to, like, you know, like, I can spot my wedding ring in some of the photos, too. I mean, it's not a super important thing, but it's kind of nice, like, especially if for some random, very rare reason, someone thinks that you commissioned your work.
Right.
And then you can bring it up with the judges and show in your documentation as proof. That is me there.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's super rare.
Right.
Super rare.
Right.
Usually the judges can see that you have commissioned work because, well, you're not able to actually explain the process.
Right. Yes. Or you left tags on your costume. Freaking
that happened?
To tell me. Yes! Several times! People have been like, yes, I made this from scratch, and my mom helped me. And I'm like, it says Target on it. Like, you're not fooling me. Like,
or Mick costumes.
Or Mick costumes. Or, like...
yeah. It's like, yeah.
My gosh, guys,
don't
smarter
cheat.
Than that.
Don't cheat.
I had one that, like, it still had, like, the folds from when it was, like, vacuum sealed from China and sent. They hadn't even ironed it. It still had, like, the crappy,
don't
like...
do that!
Wow!
Oh, I was like, really? Really? Okay.
Also in photos, like, as you're building stuff and you're like, okay, I've got 3 of these pieces, or in the case of some of my cosplays, 20. And as you're, like, going through and you're like, okay, I have to sand it, or I have to cut it out, I have to sand it, I have to primer it, I have to paint it, and then I have to add a detail on top. You can show all of that, since you have multiple pieces, in one photo by having, here's the cutout piece, here's a piece that's been sanded, here's a piece that has a detail added onto it, here's a piece that's been painted now, and here's weathering added on top of that, and you can do that all in one photo with those multiple pieces. I always love doing that with my shoes to show the process, is that I'll start working on the right shoe, get the first step done, and then I'll show left shoe with nothing done to it and right shoe with step number 1 done to it and take a photo. And then I'll move on to the other shoe, get it to step 2 or 3, and then compare them again to kind of show, here's the steps of how I built my shoe.
See, and I don't know why, but that would drive me nuts, because I have to do things all in one fell swoop together. So, like, when I do stuff like that for comparison, I have to take picture of everything at this step, everything at that step, and then I'll do compilation photos. Like, I'll get a photo, like, what is it, like, a composition program. So, like, I'll just be like, here's 5 photos, I'm going to put them in timographical order.
See, timographical, huh?
Yes. Timographical.
I am not as confident in what I am doing, and so I usually do that step-by-step go back and forth thing. So I'm like, okay, this does work, because, like, if I'm partway on that shoe and I'm like, this doesn't work, I've only ruined one of the shoes.
Oh, fair.
And I only have to fix one of them. and
Smart.
then I apply the step to the next one. But that's just my personal how I work.
No, I just all in. If I fail epically.
All of them they'll all be consistent.
They sure are. But yeah, I also kind of wanted to talk about how to like thin the herd of your photos, like making sure that your photos tell that story and like don't like sometimes you don't need a photo to be like from this step to this step.
Yes.
We can figure that out. Like photos should be like major milestones. They should show like somewhere in mid-progress, but they don't have to be like, you don't have to hold our hand because most of us are going to know how the things
You're
go
not
together.
Writing a tutorial.
Right.
Yes.
That's a good way to go. Not writing a tutorial.
Yes. I had to learn that one. Like when I first turned in one of my first documentations, it was actually on paper because the one I did at Geeks was on a computer. One of the judges loved it. She was like, "Oh, this is so cool. It's so step by step." And I had like huge paragraphs in it and all this information.
Yeah.
And it essentially was like a tutorial. But the other judges didn't like. One judge loved it. The other judges, they thought it was great, but it was too much information. They didn't have enough time to go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's good to have that stuff. I love taking tons of pictures of my progress as I go.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I'll have that written in full, like how I used to do my documentation in this big, long tutorial story thing for people on the internet.
Yeah.
But for judges, I try to keep it as a summary and reference, a quick reference guide for them.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, the flow of your progress book should always be like in a natural order. Like your flow, like how the order you put your photos should kind of coincide with how you plan to present your costume.
Yes.
And can even kind of be a reminder to help keep you on track for like if you want to make sure that you mention every piece of your costume and you're like, oh, where was I? Your reference book should be able to help you. Like, oh, I was going through blank.
Yes, documentation as a guide is so nice for your presentation. It's like, okay, I've got 5 minutes, and these are the things that I want to hit, so have your documentation reflect that. You can toss in a couple extra things where you're like, I'm not going to have time for this. Maybe the judges will notice.
Yeah.
But try and have it reflect what you're presenting.
Yeah. Like even if you jump around when you're making a cosplay, like for me, I will like work on a prop and then I'll sew a skirt and then I'll go back to the prop some more and then I'll do like a bodice and then I'll do something else.
Yeah.
Make sure that like your pictures tell the story of one thing at a time.
Yes.
Because if you're doing it in the order you made it, it can get really confusing.
Yes.
Like, okay, you got like halfway through, there's a halfway made sword, and then what? And then the skirt, okay, what? How did the sword...
A nice, easy way for me to remember things, and this also helps me like when I'm presenting the cosplay, because I always forget the wig. So I'll either start from my feet or from my head and go up and or down from there and hit everything from that point. As I've gotten better at presenting, I've started to actually summarize and group things.
Yes.
So because there could be a ton of leather armor, like leather on my shoulders, leather around my waist, leather on my calves. Those were all essentially built in very similar manners, and so I'll actually lump them together instead of going from head to toe. I'll go from method to method.
Yeah.
And that helps too. So it's like, here's my wig, all right, here's all the leather things I did, here's all the hand embroidery I did, here's all the other whatever, you know?
And then you're not wasting as much time repeating because you're like,
yes,
here's my leather armor, coming back later, here's my leather thing, but I already told you how it's made.
Yes,
so now,
it's like, it's like, okay, this words and things, bracer, there we go, this bracer I made, I cut it out, or I patterned it, I cut it, I embossed it, added in details, painted, dyed, wet formed it, heated it into shape, and added a zipper. Well, the greaves were essentially done the same way, minus maybe when I was shaping it, I added a bend to it so it wouldn't hit my ankle or you know, something like that. There, quick, short summary. That's a really, really summarized way of making bracers. If anyone wants to know.
And like. The other thing I'll say is, like, flow is important, though I know a lot of us wait till the last second to make documentation.
Me.
So a lot of times it's like a Kinko's run to go print out 30 pictures and kind of like shuffle them into an order. But yeah, even if you're last minute, like try to keep the flow of like what order you're putting those photos.
Yes.
So that it tells a story that's going to best show off what you made.
And as far as like time crunch goes, it's and as well as the organization in your documentation. So I'm always time crunching. I'll quickly throw all the pictures in that I want to use, and then I usually add in very little verbiage. Just quick keywords, these are the materials, this is a method, keywords throughout it, rather than full paragraphs in full sentences.
Yeah.
I use full sentences where needed, because that does help. But sometimes, especially when I'm on a huge time crunch, is I'll just quickly throw those pictures into a file, print them out, and then when I get free time, sitting in a panel, or if someone else is driving to the convention.
What's free time?
I know, what is free time? I'll sit down and I'll actually write in the little notes that I want to have. And it kind of makes it a little more personable in a way, too. But I also have very nice handwriting. So if you don't have nice handwriting, get a friend who does. Because you want the judges to be able to read it. And that's why typing it out also helps.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Nice. So like on that note, the next section I wanted to kind of talk about is making your documentation memorable.
Yes.
Like I kind of talked about what I did for the World Cosplay Summit one, in that I like...
And that one's intense. Like
it is, yeah. Like I made it, I wanted to make it something that people would be like, oh, I totally remember that you guys did this ridiculous portfolio. But like, just keep in mind, like, you can have fun with it.
Yes.
Like, I've seen people who will, like, completely theme their, like, notebook to their cosplay, and...
when I competed at Denver Comic-Con, there was another guy in the Masters category. His documentation, he was doing Lord Stark, as in Lord Tony Stark.
Oh,
Game of Thrones, Iron Man crossover. It was great.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was Tony Stark, but in Game of Thrones, and it was beautiful.
Nice. Okay.
And so since it kind of was like both those have the kind of a comic book fantasy fun feel to it, his documentation was all done like a comic book.
Oh, that's really cool.
I loved it. Like, and I wasn't even judging it. He was just showing me, and I was like, "This is cool."
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, that stood out, and he won an award. So,
nice.
And I'm not saying that by having it stand out means you're going to be guaranteed an award. No. But it helps judges remember, oh, that one thing, and then they like flip through their piles of documentation, and they can quickly spot yours.
Or at I liked was it at Nihon, we had someone from Full Metal Alchemist cosplay, and they brought in their documentation, and it was a literal like folder that looked like their file from the like state alchemy department.
Yes.
It had like the seal on the front, and as you go through it looked like a report on like what they had
it was
done.
Like,
it was very clever.
Yes. And they also like presented like they were being reviewed by the Alchemist board like for their renewal
of their license.
Yeah, it was great.
It was fun.
Yeah.
So like, please add personal quirks or character quirks, or like do things out of the box as long as it's still understandable.
Yes.
Make sure
your number one thing is to communicate what you made and how you made it.
Yeah, don't sacrifice memorable to be informative, because they might remember the wrong thing about your cosplay.
Yes. Sacrifice. Gosh, I can't words. Make sure it's informative. I can words. Yes.
Clever.
Fun and informative is also nice.
Fun and informative is nice,
but if you
don't
find
sacrifice
that
informative.
maybe your humor is kind of not there, go for informative.
Yeah. Like, you can still, like, even if you're not, like, a humor person, you can still add fun things that relate to your character. Like, we live in Utah, which is, like, home of scrapbook nirvana, basically.
Yes.
If you want to scrapbook something, you will find it in Utah, because they have stores that are nothing but scrapbooking. They have multiple different stores that are scrapbooking.
I was going to say, on that note, too, with documentation, and this is maybe more of a personal thing, but it probably depends on what kind of contest you're entering, and where and what their rules are, but I prefer trying to keep my documentation in a small folder where I have had people come in and it's really gorgeous and beautiful, but they'll bring in a thick folder that has been scrapbooked. Where it has like 3D like
stickers,
cute flowers on it, like paper flowers and whatnot. So it's like really thick and whatnot. And I feel really, really bad at the end of the day kind of tossing that out. Because
most contests I don't think toss them out. I think they save them and return them.
Some return them, lots of them don't though. Yeah. And so like you can ask, like if you want to do something like that, ask and find out if you're going to get it back. Yeah. Because if you're not, I mean, you might as well give them something that is like disposable and recyclable. Right.
That's fair. Like, you know, we did something sort of like that for World Cosplay Summit because we always got them back. Yes. And afterwards, it was a really nice, like, memento of all the work we put in for that year. Yes. Like, I think we actually still have it on the shelf over there. That big green scrapbook is from one of our cosplay years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. It's right there. So yeah, make sure if you can get it back, because that'd be a fun little like...
Yeah, especially if you put all that work into it, see if you can get it back. Otherwise...
Yes. So funny story is, like, I kind of made something in a scrapbooky vein the first year I did my cosplay craftsmanship stuff with Fi, like I was talking about. Yeah. And like I had probably like 8 or 9 pages of stuff I had like gone through, and it was really funny because like on DeviantArt, because that's where I posted my cosplay at the time, I had someone message me that was like, hey, like I would really love like a detailed thingy on how you put stuff together for this cosplay, because I want to make one too, or like I want to like do a report sort of a thing on this. And I was like, oh, well, here's a PDF of everything I used. So it was really fun because I could just like be like, here you go. Yep. So that was fun. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit at the very beginning, but moving on from making it memorable to filling the time you're given. Yes. If you cannot go through your documentation in the time allotted for in-person judging, you have too much.
You probably have a bit much in there, yes. You don't need to write a novel. Again, it's not a tutorial.
Yes.
You want it to have be a quick guide reference for your judges, right. Especially for the smaller competitions. Stuff like World Cosplay Summit, it's supposed to be bigger and more in-depth and whatnot, because they're going through everything with a level of scrutiny that is... I mean, akin to the Olympics, so... Right.
Well, like, remember the documentation's there to make your presentation better? Yes. But in the end, they want to see the finished piece. Yes. Like, the documentation, how you got there is important, but the finished piece is what they are judging.
Yeah, the documentation is there to complement what you are presenting.
Yes. Try to balance both. Yeah. Anything else on time you wanted to mention? Like, it's totally okay to rehearse what you're going to say in front of the judges. Yeah.
I always forget to.
Like, for me, I mean, it depends on the competition, but, like, for me, I will, like, actually physically, like, either mouth or say the things out loud and pay attention to how long it takes me to talk through it. And if it's taking longer than 5 minutes, or if I'm in a group with friends, like, taking longer than how much time I get, then I kind of, like, reevaluate either how quickly I'm going to say or if I'm going to summarize things. Yeah.
As a beginner, I was like, head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Yeah.
Remember all the things that you're wearing, including the wig. Yeah. Yeah. Or in one case, the thing on your back. Like, you know, if you're cosplaying Link and you strap the sword to your back and you totally forget, and as you're, like, turning to walk away from the judges, you go, oh, look at this on your way out, please. Oh, no. I did that once.
But, like, with World Cosplay Summit, I think it was good because we had a partner. And as one of them was explaining, like, if Melissa was explaining something, I would be, like, watching and making sure that she mentioned everything on her costume. And if she got to the end and hadn't said something, I had it repeating in my head, like, tell Melissa to talk about her wig because she wefted it herself. Like, tell Melissa to talk about her jewelry because she made that by hand and she hasn't mentioned it yet. Mm-hmm. And, like, she would do the same thing for me. Because, like, make sure that we both got to talk about everything on our costumes. Yes. So that's helpful in groups because, like, and it also kind of helps you not be as nervous. Like, if you're doing like a couple or group, is like
teamwork,
because you're not paying attention to everything that you're gonna say because you know you have a backup. Like, if you forget, yes, your partner's there to be like, hey, you forgot this. Cool. Yeah. yeah, that's all I had.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else for documentation. Peanut Gallery, you got any questions?
I want to look at your documentations.
You can. It's right there.
Yeah.
Pull that sucker out.
So, on the blog, hopefully we'll be able to figure this out by the time I post this, and this episode goes live. I will have ways for you guys to download and or view some documentation examples. And
I'm gonna take pictures of this scrapbook.
You should take a pictures of the scrapbook. It's really cool. Yeah, so we'll have files or links or something for you in the blog, CosplayStitchandSeam.com if people haven't figured that out yet. And that way you guys can see examples of how you can put together documentation.
Yeah.
From really simple to super complex.
Yeah.
And if anyone has any questions, again, make sure to email us or join the Facebook group.
Yeah. Or email us or join the Facebook group or hit us up on the website.
On the website, yes.
I'm like, which one did she not say?
Yes.
It was CosplayStitchandSeam.com. Oh, they're looking at
all
my
these
floral
resources.
mock-up.
It was your face.
Yes.
Yeah, so horror stories now.
Horror stories!
Dun, dun, dun.
I have a fun one that was sent in from a cosplayer called Fireshark.
I love this one.
Are you ready for this? So this one says, "Hi there, Fireshark here. I've been cosplaying for 14 years, but this has always been my most stressful horror. I mostly build big monsters, so that's probably saying something."
I like the name Fireshark and building monsters. That's really awesome.
Makes me kind of think of Sharknado.
I
I
actually watched a movie the other day where the shark got lit on fire. It was awesome.
Whoa! Not for real though.
No, it's a horror film with a fake shark, Pannon.
I still haven't seen Sharknado.
I haven't. That's fine.
I feel like collective gasps, though I should.
Horror story, horror story.
Horror story, okay. Okay, here we go, guys. Set the stage with BlizzCon 2009. BlizzCon is a convention run by Blizzard Games. We were backstage ready to do our walk-on. I was dressed as a 10-foot skeleton monster, Kel'Thuzad. He even included how to pronounce it, Kel'Thuzad. His waist was approximately on level with my face, his torso above me, and I puppeted his arms. So this is a huge monster.
That is amazing.
There was a structure sort of like a roller coaster that I lifted the front of and strapped into, and his lower body was put around me. He had been stable before. He had walked through to get backstage, and I sat in under him. I had to crawl on my knees to get through doors a few times, but a few minutes before going on, he showed his issue. Not falling forward or back, but twisting sideways as if he were a little teapot.
A giant teapot.
We had a whole backpack with us of supplies, but nothing to reinforce a joint rotation. Plus, I was buried in him and was no help while my friend desperately tried to come up with something with duct tape. Finally, I saw the scissors in her hand and instructed her to use the scissors as the strut itself. They were about the right length and metal, so my costume went on stage with scissors taped inside it as a support. It felt like Apollo 13. He survived the walk-on. We got second place. Always think outside the box.
Oh my gosh, I love the scissors as the strut on it. And an Apollo 13 comment makes me laugh so hard, too.
So thank you, Fireshark, for sharing your cosplay horror story.
That is super amazing. I love it.
Yes. I'm trying to think of one that I've had with, documentation, but I feel like almost every one I don't prepare for is a horror story when I haven't done my documentation ahead of time.
I think there was one time I think I just went in with just the reference. I didn't have time. I didn't give myself any time, actually, to make any of the progress photos. I just went in with just a reference. I think it was Ordon Link. With I don't remember the Anime Salt Lake. There we go. That one. So I had the reference, and I was like, this is a really boring reference. It's just Link. I mean, Link's awesome, but... So I sat there with, a pencil, 10, 20 minutes before judging, and was writing in all of these things. This is where I got the idea to write in stuff on pictures and whatnot, and just wrote it all in really quickly and took that in.
Aww.
So, I think that's the best, probably the worst set of documentation I ever put together.
I had a bad experience in judging when all I brought was the reference photo, and I was on staff at the convention that I was getting judged at that same year, so I was running around a ton and I didn't have time to go get it color printed, so I was like, black and white is the best I can do. And sometimes that's true, sometimes it's the best you can do.
Yep.
But they were extremely strict about it, and like I walked I know I walked in the door and they were like, well, how do we know this is supposed to be the color? And I did not have time to print like reference stuff, but I had it on my phone, which is always kind of like
phone is a nice backup, but it's really hard like passing around your phone, and then suddenly the contestant leaves and you're like, oh, their phone is still here.
Yeah. But the judges actually refused to look at it. They were like, well, nope, that's not one of the accepted forms of documentation.
Ooh, strict.
It's really strict. And then with that being it, they were like, well, I mean, at this point, shouldn't maybe have even bothered entering, because we can't judge anything because you don't have progress photos. And so we have no way of knowing if you made this. And I was thinking to myself, well, if you were like competent in knowing how things are built, you can still look at it and see that I built it. But
that's why I say it's really rare that comes up, because even without progress photos,
you should.
Usually judges will, like, because like not...
Every competition's going to be different, and
every judge is going to be different. Yeah.
So, like, I'm not saying it wasn't my fault. A lot of that totally was my fault. Mm-hmm. But that was my horror story, because that one stung a lot.
Yeah. It's still a pretty rare thing for them to be like, you didn't bring in progress photos, therefore you didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because usually you can get somebody explaining something enough that you can tell if they did it or not.
But, like, definitely be aware if your contest is more strict, that can happen.
Yeah. I guess I'm saying, please don't be scared of that, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's rare.
So yeah, horror story. So
I got a funny one.
Do you?
Yes.
Give me a funny one. I want some funny.
All right, we'll do a funny one. So I was getting ready for Geeks, actually, and it was my first time wearing my Shadow of the Colossus cosplay. It was my very first one that I put together, and I was like so excited because I love that game. So I'm running around the convention, and my head just starts pounding. Like, I don't know why my head is hurting at all. Like, I had done all these things to make sure like everything on my costume was like put together, nothing would fall off. I didn't want anything falling apart, and so I put my wig on too tight. I didn't know that was a thing, that you could cut off the blood circulation to your brain. So I'm running around this convention trying to have fun. I've got my little brother with me. It's my first convention that I ever took him to. Like, I think I might have taken him to Bonsai before that, but like, this was the first gaming convention that I took him to, and like, we were having so much fun together, but I was just dying. And so like, I went and sat down outside of a bathroom and just kind of took the wig off for a second. And my friend was running to get me painkillers, and as soon as I took the wig off, my head felt better. And I was like, what? What the heck? Nani? And I was like, I looked down at it, and I was like, moved the clips out like one more each so that it wasn't so tight. And I was like, today I learned that you can cut off the circulation to your brain with a wig. So...
You know, I did that same thing with when I cosplayed Rapunzel.
Oh.
Because that wig weighed about 15 pounds.
Yeah.
And so, like, I had pin curls all over my head, which are, like, really tiny buns. And then the wig was pinned in, like, on every pin curl so that the weight was kind of distributed. But still, like, I was wearing it for probably, like, 7 hours. And it weighed a lot on my head and neck. And, like, by the time we were in the cosplay green room, I had the worst migraine. It was so gross.
Yeah, so don't wear your wigs too tight.
Yeah.
You'll be like, why does my head hurt? I know why.
Oof. So, if you guys want us to come see you, review your cosplay products, or take on your controversial or cause-positive topics, gotta let us know. Hit us up.
At CosplayStitchandSeam.com, fill out the form, or...
on Gmail, CosplayStitchandSeam@gmail.com, or, of course, our Facebook
page!
Come be friends and join.
That thing.
And if you... Yay! So if you want us to come talk to your local con and see what your cosplay community is like, make sure you talk to your local convention and we might come see you.
Invite us.
Don't forget to listen to us on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And I think that's about it.
I think that's it. Yes.
Thank you guys for listening. As always, we love you. We think you're amazing and love seeing the awesome cosplays being shared on the group.
And seeing you guys get ready for the judging jackalopes and being the judging jackalope of all trades.
Be the jackalope of all trades.
Be the jackalope. But yeah, music.
Music by Macy Roberts, and
audio editing and recording by David Jeffress of Dungeons and Chill, and also his new podcast, Comic Trades Monthly, so it's the Comic Book Club. So make sure you check that one out. Last of all, you ready?
I've been staring at Pannon like for the last 5 minutes waiting for the pun.
To judge my puns. When it comes to cosplay deadlines, you needle the friends you can get.
Oh.
Bye!
I even tried to guess it before you